Welcome to the No Fear podcast. Today, Ophir and I sit down with Sasha Reiss, one of the co-founders of Playground, a software that childcare providers use to run their childcare business. This is a very niche business, and Ophir and I have a very interesting conversation with Sasha about how he went from being an art history major to a major entrepreneurial success. Please enjoy.
Welcome to the No Fear podcast with your hosts, Noah and Ophir, where we sit down to discuss the journeys of accomplished young professionals who have taken action towards manifesting a career and a life that go far beyond the ordinary. Each week, we bring to you a young professional currently achieving success in entrepreneurship, STEM or other forward-thinking, innovative sectors. Please enjoy today's episode of the No Fear podcast, brought to you by House & Hughes, shophouseandhughes.com. The perfect destination for thousands of curated wall art designs.
All right. So Sasha, first off, thanks for hopping on. If you could tell us a little bit about Playground and how it operates.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. So Playground is an app and a website that manages your preschool or early childcare center. So basically, it's anything and everything you need to run a childcare business. So on the parent end of things, it's how they first enroll their child, where they fill out all their information. It's where they pay their tuition, their security deposit. It's how they sign their tuition contract and parent handbooks. How they get like photos and videos throughout the day. Really, the entire parent experience or family experience is handled on that end. And then on the administrator side, it's where they, record their expenses. It's where they, money coming in, money coming out. They can do HR stuff, so managing their teachers and permissioning there. And then there's a ton of reporting that goes into it as well. And so it's a huge reporting suite for them as well. So really like all-in-one tool to do all that.
So I don't think you have children. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But so how have you met these pain points? How have you figured out how to build a product around something that I assume you wouldn't have experience in?
That's a great question. So my co-founders, Josh and Dan, they're brothers. Their mom runs a huge childcare center in Los Angeles. Their grandma is an administrator for preschool. Their aunt also runs a couple preschools. Sister's like an occupational therapist in childcare. And so growing up, their whole lives were just revolving around childcare. And so this actually initially started off as just a side project in college where we built a really simple attendance app essentially for their mom. And her other friends who run childcare centers hit her up and were like, hey, what is that app that you're using? Can you get us involved? And she's like, hey, yeah, like my boys made this for me. And so it kind of grew like out of sort of like on a consulting basis, sort of like, people could sign kids in and out, but then they're like, hey, like we need the ability to message families if they're running late or something like that. And so it's like, okay, now we have to meet that use case. And so like slowly it kind of evolved from like a sort of consulting based project into a a product that we actually could build a company around.
These are generally private businesses then rather than the public school system.
Correct. I mean, we work with school districts. We work with Head Start. So a lot of childcare providers and families get subsidized payments from the state or from other programs like that. But there's a lot of private pay, mostly private pay.
And more specifically then, how's your role in the Playground process?
So by trade, I'm a product designer. So, early days, I was designing all the screens. I designed the interface for products, and then Josh and Dan, they're coders, they built it. These days, as we've grown, it's kind of shifted a bit more. The product is in a really, really good spot where people are sold on the product, and now it's more about accelerating growth. So I'm, my day to day is much more sales and marketing. But any given day could be, any of these like 500 different things that you kind of just fall into your lap.
What exactly is the difference between a product designer and a coder? Where does that differentiate?
Yeah. So a product designer, I don't know. Are you familiar with Figma?
No.
Okay. Figma, it's a fantastic tool for building interfaces. So it's kind of like Photoshop, but specifically meant for building interfaces. It's just a tool. So it's basically a product designer will mock up what the app looks like. You can prototype it. But there's no actual like data behind it. Like you can't give it to a user in like real life and say, hey, like use this app, the developers come in and actually plug it in and make it a real thing. They build it. There's a database tied to it. And so as a product designer, my role is understanding, who the user is, what their pain point is, and the best way that our app or interface can solve it essentially.
Okay, so you
Once
kind of
that's figured out,
conceptualize what the idea is and like design and that interface and that front end, and the coders make it work on the back end and kind of create the fundamentals of it.
more or less, it's a lot of problem solving. It's a lot of like really deeply understanding what users are like, what are they doing now? Why are they doing it? And what do they think, in an ideal world, like what should the software be doing for them? And then creating the path of least resistance for them in the app, I guess. I mean, that's like the way that I approach it, at least.
Right. And what kind of background do you need to have to be a product designer? Is that a computer science background, or what was your kind of collegiate experience that brought you to this point?
Yeah, I had no idea that product design was a field. I was a art history major, so very humanities based, not at all, really like I was gonna, graduate college and just be super unemployed. But
How'd you make that transition?
just out of necessity. I mean, like I've always been creative. Like I used to take a lot of photos. I did video editing. Like I've always been really into sort of creative things. Josh one day called me. He's like, "Hey, I was a junior in college. He's like, "Yo, we're gonna build this app for my mom. Like, learn how to design." I was like, "What does that even mean?" So I just watched. I watched like probably like 300 hours worth of YouTube videos. I just like started. What I would do is I would like just take screenshots of like Twitter, Facebook, just like these pages that we use every single day, these apps, and I would just rebuild them in Figma. And then slowly, like the designs got more and more complex as instead of doing like one screen, you do like a whole workflow. And so then eventually built out, using my very, very, very small knowledge of product design, and built like the first version of, at the time it was called Carline, later Playground. Garbage, absolute garbage. But it worked enough. So it was really just like, it's been like by trial. What we do is, we'll ship something. Obviously, the idea is you get feedback early and often from people. Sometimes we just would ship stuff and then it would either break or it would just not be thought through well. And then, people would complain, we get stressed out, and then we would just like fix it overnight and ship it again. Like we were breaking the shit out of the app. Like it would break all the time. But we were just like constantly fixing it. And that's also largely because of my inexperience with design at that time.
Gotcha. So who was the initial customer? I know you mentioned, for example, your friend's mother, but was she paying from day one? How'd that go?
Yeah. So our big thing was like, hey, we're going to build this app, but we need like a letter of intent that you guys are going to use it. So it wasn't like actual payment upon like before we made it. But it was like getting into the office, having the executive director sign a non-binding contract, essentially saying we intend to use this app once it's made for us. Again, that's not like money in the bank or anything like that, but like it was some commitment on their end that they're going to use it and be a customer.
From then on, once obviously her competitors are starting to see success and so on with software such as this, was it a snowball rolling downhill and customers left and right started popping up, or how did that process go?
Yeah, so this actually, we first started building it right before, this was in fall 2019. Then obviously COVID happened, and really quickly there was this very intense need to go digital, go contactless. Most states they require kids to be signed in, signed out. And so, sharing a pen and clipboard and paper was no longer a viable option because of the pandemic. And so it really accelerated this transition to an otherwise like very tech resistant industry. And so our big competitive advantage at the time, besides obviously like our proximity to Josh and Dan's family, was our speed. So we were the first ones to launch contactless sign-in. So a bunch of childcare centers like all over the country, like it was like upstate New York, somewhere in like middle of California, like middle of Texas, like these random people like I think like rural Georgia, one of our first customers just found us out of necessity. They were like looking up like contactless sign-in preschool, and we just had like a website up for that already. And so we just got a bunch of traction initially during the pandemic because of that.
With you being first to market, what does your competition look like now?
To clarify, the market's saturated. There's been like the biggest player. They've been around since like the early 90s. Procare. They actually their tech is on-prem stuff, and then a few years ago they acquired a cloud-based company that it was essentially a competitor. We were the first to launch the contact, like just that specific feature, which helped us with traction. But again, like there's some bigger players in the market. The thing that's really exciting though is that there's so much greenfield. Like it's the market has not really been penetrated. There's still so many people operating with paper and pencil, like these sort of small businesses. People are very tech resistant. Like, the old fashioned way works for them. And so there's still so much room for everyone to grow. And obviously like childcare is like a huge issue in the country right now. And so there's a lot of attention and, effort moving into it.
So that transition from going from paper to digital, obviously there's a tremendous amount of friction there. Do you see you're more having to sell these customers, or are these customers coming to you out of necessity of a changing environment and so on?
Yeah, no, it's both. So, I mean, there's different kind of sales, and there's different buyer personas. You have like family childcares, which it's just one person, and they have anywhere from like 2 to 8 or 10 kids in their home. It's just them. They will sign up by themselves, take a 15-minute call with us, and then have parents checking in and out by the end of the day. And then you have then you have more the enterprise side of things, where it's like you're working with different stakeholders, you're showing them how it's going to work, and at that scale you have thousands of families that are going to be impacted by a transition. So you have like a whole team, work with their whole team on like an implementation plan. So it kind of depends. The truth is, we make it really like the switch is really, really easy, and especially the whole idea is like, how do we give them value as quickly as possible to get some skin in the game on their part, get them to commit to it. The second that they see no more paperwork, billing just shoots out every single week or every 2 weeks or every month. It's like things that you kind of take for granted that people are using for their business, but they aren't. Like once you show them hey, this is like something that we can just immediately take 3 or 4 hours off your plate every week. It's like a no-brainer.
I saw in your bio that you guys are now working with the state of Iowa. How has that transition been working in the public domain?
That transformed our business overnight. It was crazy. Just for some context, essentially they were looking for, oftentimes this is the unit economics for childcare providers is pretty messed up. It's hard tuition is really high, but at the same time, teachers don't get paid much. There's built-in ceilings to the growth of these businesses often. Cause there's certain ratios you have to have for certain age groups. Like if you're toddlers, you have only so many kids that can be in a room at a time. So you can't just have infinite growth in that sense. So what happens is oftentimes there's these groups or alliances or networks that get together, and then we'll basically buy on behalf of 80 or 100 or 150 providers. And the state of Iowa basically did that on a statewide level, where they went and basically requested bids from vendors, said, hey, we want to do this for all the licensed providers in Iowa. So we applied, we won the bid, and now every single provider in Iowa gets to use this for free, and the state pays for it. So
every child in the state of Iowa that falls under childcare is operating under Playground?
No. So if they want to use us, they can, and they can use us for free. The state's very much pushing, the early childhood Iowa, they have a whole initiative right now on helping these business owners use software that's purpose built to help them, get the hours back every week and increase their profit margins. It's basically we just call people and say, hey, this is free. It does this and this. Do you want to sign up? And 9 out of 10 times, it's just yes. Granted, there are our competitors, because again, we have competitors, they already exist, and a lot of people in Iowa are already using them. But when you call and say, hey, you know how you're paying, $150 a month, you can just stop and use us instead. So it's been fantastic. And also being one of the coolest parts about our job is it's really tangible, the impact that you have on these people's lives. Oftentimes they're spending their entire weekends just doing the administrative stuff that they don't have time to do during the week. And so when you're able to see this software get implemented, hear how much time they're saving, what they're able to do with their free time, it's really rewarding. And so then when you throw it, the distribution of the scale of a state it really just multiplies the impact and the reward, by orders of magnitude.
Well, back to the design side, you talked a little bit about the roadmap of how it started out as a attendance platform and then it grew based on use case. What's next for Playground?
Yeah, we have a bunch of exciting stuff in the pipeline. We're working with, there's a lot of stuff that we want to do with the food programs. A lot of providers their participants, or their families are participants in CACFP, which is like a federal food program. So basically providers provide food to the children, breakfast, snack, lunch, that sort of thing. And then they're reimbursed by the government. And there's a ridiculous amount of manual data entry that goes into it right now. And all that data lives on Playground already. And so we want the people who need that data to basically open up their system so we could just punch it in for the providers. It would save like a ridiculous amount of time, and it's a really core part of these people's businesses. A lot of revenue from their business is derived from this program. And so there's a lot of stuff we want to do there. But outside of that, there's still so much we want to do. We want to do payroll for providers. A couple of the things I don't want to say yet, but big things in the work, I think, for the space as a whole. Keep an eye on our changelog.
With the state of Iowa being obviously, there's 49 other states. Are you guys petitioning those state governments as well to basically give that stamp of approval once more and integrate Playground into, rather push Playground to the other childcare options within that state?
Yeah, we think that in the next 3 to 5 years, there'll probably be 30 or so more of these contracts. Iowa's just a case study, and it's going to be a successful one on how bulk purchasing and this purchasing power positively affects the industry in the space. So absolutely, the idea is to shop it around. And I will say there's a lot of stuff already currently in motion, from these states.
All right, which state is next? Florida?
We'll see.
How has building a team been for you? Something more qualitative. How has it been?
Yeah.
You're one of 3 founders, correct?
Yeah.
And how large is the team now?
We are 11 full-time.
How's that process been?
It has been unlike anything I've ever done in my life before. I've never, something that you just kind of thrust into. When we first started, hiring people, we were just the worst managers. This is my first job ever. I've never actually had a real job. And so I don't know what it's like to be managed. All this stuff that, it's just learning on the fly. I will say it's super, super important to just be ruthlessly picky about who you let on the team. And when you when you find someone, when you know type thing. So it's been really, really incredible hiring people and seeing their impact immediately and being wow, this was just it's just crazy how this pays off. I don't know. Have you hired people? What have you guys grown your team? You have any experience with that?
Yeah, we have a team of 30 now. So I've gone through the same things as you. It's a show, so to say, because like you, everything was on the fly. Managing was something I wasn't used to, but now I've been able to delegate between certain managers under me, where I've actually moved away from much of that, which makes for a lot more smooth operating process because I had to work on what I want to do and I don't have to really watch over people's shoulders. But it's a transition.
Yeah. No, I mean, and we'll see how it develops, honestly. We have some ambitious goals for this year. So if all goes well, we'll hopefully be around that headcount too by the end of this year. But yeah, no, it's crazy. Having a team, it really is.
I would assume then your largest operating expenses is wages, right? So you guys, I would assume, would have to have raised a lot of money. How's the capital raising process been for you guys?
Yeah. So we raised during the best time ever to raise VC funding, a couple of years ago. Runway is good. Cash flow is good. We haven't needed to raise since. The truth is, Dan is the one who actually did all of the meetings with the founders, or with the VCs. That guy is the VC guy. I do know like being on the other side of it and like just seeing him take like 70, 80 meetings a week was like brutal. It's really brutal. And we have like this office where a couple other startups work out of right now. And so they all just went through the raising process. And right now, obviously the market conditions are not super great for that. And so like seeing them just like, meeting after meeting, like rejection after rejection, it's great. It's really brutal. But like, it's really just a story about perseverance and just going until you get that one or two yeses.
So going back into your background a little bit, I know you were an art history major. So sometimes we talk with some people with a STEM background and they moved into more of a marketing or sales role, and they talk a little bit how the problem solving of their STEM degree helped them in what they're doing now. What about your background or something that you've experienced in your life has made you successful in what you're doing now?
I actually was talking about this with my parents during lunch today. So obviously like the art history, it's like not really hard skills that you can go. It's not like anything technical. But what I think that was really great that I picked up and developed through my, sort of humanities experience, is the ability to, critical thinking, and then the ability to write and communicate and convey what you're thinking. Like clear communication, clear writing is so important, especially on the marketing and sales side. It's really just like 10x how we've been able to operate and, putting out like really good, even like something like a really well-written email. Like it's so, it's crazy like how far that can get you. Like actually both of our lead investors, I think we got because of follow-up emails, which like would not have been possible if we, were writers.
No, I completely agree with you. Working in a sales environment right now, communication is definitely starting to become a lost art with the lack of face-to-face communication. So in your sales side, I mean, in tech, you typically have trade shows, trade organizations. How do you get in the face of your potential customers? Because I mean, I don't know, maybe there are trade shows for, childcare or organizations, but that we wouldn't know of. But what's that like?
Yeah. No, there are. It's actually crazy. So this last year, 2022, I went to, I think, 15 childcare conferences across the country. Like I was in Des Moines, I was in Nashville, I was in Norfolk, Virginia, I was in Pasadena, upstate New York, like all over. We're going to be at probably 15 or 20 more this year.
Do you feel like your type of personality and your age range stands out from the people in those types of conferences, or is it pretty similar?
Oh, absolutely. We are generally like among the younger people there. We always have the best energy. So people are definitely drawn to that. And we kind of use that to our advantage. We actually get like really rowdy at these conferences and we talk to everyone. It's really fun, honestly. If you ever want to come, we like, honestly, we have an open offer to all of our homeowners. Like if you want to come sell Playground at a conference, like we will gladly pay for you to come.
Hey, we'll come down to Miami.
We're actually, there's going to be a few in Tampa. I don't know. Probably not how you want to spend your Saturday though.
Well, what do some of these conferences look like? Are they, big trade show rooms or someone speaking at the front, or what is that experience like?
Yeah. So a lot of it is based around professional development for both staff and directors. So states require that staff get like X amount of professional development every couple of years. And like there's a couple of different categories, but basically centers will pay for their staff to go and then just get trained and call it a weekend. There's always a room of vendors and exhibitors, so that's where we hang out. And it's like anyone who's adjacent in the space will be there. So like our competitors will be there, but then there's also people who are selling like toys and books, like stuff for the classroom. There's always some sort of like jungle gym person, people selling curriculum, people selling all this like random stuff, like insurance. It's anything that like can be used in the industry.
Are there any type of like strategic partnerships that you've already made or would like to make with some of those book vendors or anything like that?
Yeah, part of what we're doing, we're going to be launching a cool marketplace soon with some partners in that sense. We get asked our like logo is a slide, and obviously our name is Playground. And so we get asked like way too many times at this conference, like how much does your jungle gym cost? How much is your playset? I'm like, talk to the guy with like the big slide in front of his booth. Like we're the app guys, but we're actually looking for a playground partner, just to get like some sort of like affiliate thing going. Because we've been asked it like so, it's actually ridiculous how many times we get asked it.
Do you get to see any insight into the books of the childcare companies that you're working with?
No, not at all. Well, what do you mean by that? Like the actual like
the accounting back end of their books. They generally use like a QuickBooks or a Xero or something like that. Is that a feature that you guys are looking
the books
for?
that were being sold there? Yeah. So I mean, we do like the whole financial picture. So we have like expense management.
How are the margins in a business like that? Childcare.
Superb. Truthfully, a lot of I actually just watched this really great what's it called, this like some NPR podcast on the kind of messed up economics of childcare in the US. A lot, like there's not a lot that these providers, like especially the home providers, get to take home. That being said, there are like a surprising amount. There's a lot of private equity roll-ups of childcares that are happening in the country. And so if you can operate at a certain scale, then it makes a lot more sense. Like the economics make a lot more sense. But by far, wages is like the highest expense.
Got it. Could you scale into more of like a K through 12 environment? Would your platform thrive there, or is it specifically for the childcare?
As is right now, it's a childcare platform. We always say, in like a 3 to 5 year timeline, at a certain scale, it would not be that difficult to transition into K-12. Obviously, it's a whole different suite of features and needs. But the thinking is like, if, all the families are already on Playground, for their childcare, it's already on their phones, making that jump into K-12 would not be that difficult. So it's kind of like built-in distribution in that sense. But it would only make sense at a certain scale.
So from a personal growth standpoint, obviously you've taken a lot of responsibility. You've built a company that now has 11 people, scaled nationwide. How has it changed you?
It's maybe more proactive about stuff. Like, especially early days, it's like, if you don't do this thing, like it just will never get done. You know what I mean? Like, it's like people don't want to do so like you have to take it on yourself. I don't know. Also, like, just I have a lot more respect for a lot of these. Like, I never thought I'd be doing cold calls. Like, I've spent like days and weeks just cold calling people. Making these like cold outreach, trying to and so it's like giving me a lot more perspective. Like, this is actually an insane thing to do every single day, which I respect a lot. I think also like it kind of shows me like if you really just want to be your own boss, like there is a path to that kind of success. I think like, especially, I don't know, like what your experience, like if you're going through USC, I feel like a lot of it was like driven towards like, all right, like you're going to get a job at like some corporate firm and like, this is like the path, like this is how you do it. Like they don't really go into too much of like, all right, if you want to be your own boss, you're going to start your business. Like this is what you need to do.
What has been one habit that you've grown during your entrepreneurial process that you can now look back at as something that's really helping you through the entrepreneurial journey?
That's a good question. I think exercise has been a big one. Especially like early days where it was just like, we're sitting like in a WeWork, just grinding like 14 hours a day building this product. Especially at the time, like because it was like all I was thinking about, like, I'd be at home making dinner or whatever. I'm just like thinking about like, all right, like workflows and blah, blah, blah. And so like going out and just like, at that time it was like hour and a half, 2 hours a day, like, just grinding. I was like on this like really regimented program. Just like mind went blank. I was like, I'm just going to do this. Like, I just need to, air out for a second. I think that was like a huge thing for my mental health, at least. This is, people always talk about like how tough it is to be, an entrepreneur and this and that. Like you have to set yourself up with systems to give yourself a break so that you can, not burn out and you can keep working hard towards it. And I think the big thing for me was making sure that I was getting outside, I was exercising, getting the heart rate up, that sort of thing.
So now that you're continuing this process, maybe you're not in that 14-hour day grind, maybe you are. What does your day-to-day look like? How much time do you devote towards the project? How much do you devote towards your, personal growth and, relaxation? What does your day look like?
ideally, I'm waking up at 7 every single day, going to the gym. Realistically, that's happening like 2 or 3 days a week. In the office by 9 every day, we have to stand up. And then, the day itself, like, really can take any sort of path. Sometimes, like, on Friday, I had 7 demos in a row, like, just back to back sales calls. Sometimes it'll be just like a design that I'm working on, like a new feature. Or like I'll just be building like a new marketing site page for our website. Hard to say what the actual day looks like. I always go get Sweetgreen. That's like a given. Maybe that's like the ritual I built. Kind of heinous how much I eat Sweetgreen. And then, home by like 8 p.m. usually, depending on like how long the day goes. Dinner, I like to cook, and then I'm just chilling with my roommates, do it over again.
So regimented. Good. I like it. As we close up the episode, we always like to ask every guest that hops on, what's your no fear moment?
So for a while, like when we were still in school, like we didn't really think of Playground as like a company. It was just like an app, a little project that we did for a couple centers. It was just like, some money on the side. And we applied. This is like when we first got our, our first institutional check from a VC. And I think initially it was like a $50,000 check, and it turned into like a $250,000 check, which at the time seemed like an insane amount. It's like someone wants to give us $250,000. Like, that's crazy. And we had like this long talk, because at the time Dan was working full time for Brex. I was in school. Like, we were all doing our thing. Like, it was never like a thought like this is gonna be what it is now. And we were just like, like this moment right now, like this decision we're gonna make, like if we're taking this money, we're not just gonna take this much money and just like around with it. Like, we have to take it seriously. And so like we said yes, and like that was like the push, the jump into the deep end. To like make this what it is now. Like the second we sent that email, it was like, all right, like clock's ticking, game on. I remember like at some point we're all just like sitting there like, all right, like we're just gonna do this, like send it.
That's awesome. So what would you tell someone in a 4-year degree program right now that might want to not go the conventional path and start an entrepreneurial life? What would some advice that you would give them be?
Yeah, the truth is, like, you don't have to, like, everything should kind of be de-risked for yourself if possible. Like, if you're in a position where you can go to school, I think like obviously like there's other routes that you can take. You can go traveling, you can just do projects, whatever it is. Like, I think that for me at least, college was great in developing like the soft skills, like the social side of things. And USC at least was really great in terms of giving me the space I needed to like explore other options. So like I was like shooting photos a lot. I was skating a lot. I was working on this app. And so like you don't have to just like take that blind step of faith before you have some sort of validation. Kind of like how we talked about that our first customer, like we weren't going to do unless like there was some sort of intent, like we could get a commitment on their end that they were going to buy our software. So like if you are thinking, this is I guess what my advice would be, like work on stuff on the side, put stuff out there, ship. And if you get traction, if people are willing, depending on I guess more from like an app perspective, like if people are resonating with it, then make that jump. But like there's so much market research that you could do just by putting stuff out there and seeing how people react to it. And I think that's like the move. So build, put it out there, and kind of go from there.
I like that. Sasha, where can people find you online?
If you want to see me post, I'm on Twitter, Reiss Sasha, REISS Sasha. Otherwise, follow me on. No, yeah, just Twitter's good. I actually I went mini viral the other day.
I'll have to check that out. Sasha, thanks for hopping on.
Thanks, Sasha.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the No Fear podcast, brought to you by House & Hughes. For more information about our show, visit thenofearpodcast.com. If you enjoy this podcast, be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. You can also connect with us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok for insights into future episodes.